Over the last week, you may have read or heard about a recent lecture held on UNL's Innovation Campus. The discussion centered around a new report on climate change and its impact on the state of Nebraska. Commissioned by UNL's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources, the report projects a climate that could dramatically affect agriculture here by the end of the century. Don Wilhite, one of the report's researching authors, joined us earlier this week to discuss the study's findings, starting with how the climate has already changed in Nebraska.
Climate has changed in the past, and more recently, we've noticed about a 1 degree increase in temperature since 1895. That doesn't really capture the true significance of the change, because a lot of the changes that we've seen have been, say, since 1970, where we've seen increasing temperatures, increasing length of the frost-free season. We're seeing changes in the plant hardiness zone as these move northward, warmer temperatures and so on. We're also seeing changes in high temperature stress days. This is projected to continue on into the future, and so there are some pretty scary issues here and challenges that all Nebraskans are going to face in the future.
Why has it accelerated so rapidly, and why do you expect it to continue to do so?
Well, the increasing emissions of greenhouse gases, particularly CO2 is the one you hear the most about. This is increasing at an increasing rate. And so we've gone from about 280 parts per million in the atmosphere in the pre-industrial revolution period to, in May of 2014, we hit 402 parts per million. And so this is increasing at about 2 to 2.5 parts per million per year. And we haven't seen anything like this in at least the last 650,000 years. And there's a direct correlation between the concentrations of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere and global temperature.
Right. We hear a lot about GHGs, we talk a lot about them, but why are they so bad? How does it affect climate so much?
Well, they make up a very small portion of the atmospheric composition. Most of the atmosphere is made up of nitrogen and oxygen. But you have this small, about 1% of carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, water vapor, and so on, that these serve as the heat regulators for the climate. So the incoming shortwave solar radiation that we receive from the sun, the atmosphere is relatively transparent to that. But once it's absorbed by the Earth and then re-emitted into the atmosphere, it's re-emitted as infrared, long-wave radiation. And these greenhouse gases essentially trap that heat in the atmosphere and slow its emission back into space. And so if you increase the concentration of these greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, you increase the heat trapping capacity of the atmosphere, therefore you're altering the heat balance of the Earth. And that's what happens. So the more we put these greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, the more increase in temperature and all the other related climate changes we're going to see.
As you project to 2100, how do you expect Nebraska's climate to further change?
Well, the projections for the future, and this is taken largely from the National Climate Assessment Report that was published in May of this year, projects that if you look at the sort of business as usual scenario, which is the path that we're on right now, we're looking at increase in average temperatures in Nebraska of 8 to 9 degrees. Because we don't completely understand the climate system, it may be less, but it also could be more, so that's an issue. We're looking at a tremendous increase in the number of high temperature stress days. So these are days over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. If one reflects back on the drought of 2012, for example, Lincoln on average records about 5 days over 100 degrees on an average summer. In 2012 we had 17. McCook generally averages around 10 to 11 days over 100 degrees. In 2012, they had 37 days over 100 degrees. So if we look at these projections in high temperature stress days and we compare them to 2012, we could be looking at 2012 to become kind of the average summer in Nebraska in terms of temperatures. This is a pretty scary picture because it creates all kinds of stress, not just on the natural environment, but obviously on agriculture, on livestock heat stress, evaporative demand, and it just runs across so many different sectors.
What can people do to, without policy, what can people individually do to to limit climate change?
Well, I think individually, I mean, a lot of this begins with the individual. We all need to be looking at how we can reduce our carbon footprint. And so this is sort of all aspect of your daily life, the kind of car you drive, where you set your thermostat, all of those kinds of things. But it's really important that we begin to influence and have higher expectations of our elected officials, because there's been a lot of ignoring of this issue from a science perspective at the local level as well as at the national level, and not so much globally. Most countries are coming together around this issue. It's unfortunate that in the U.S., instead of discussing how we're going to change in terms of our energy efficiency and how we're going to change our release of or increasing emissions of greenhouse gases, there's still a lot of discussions about whether or not humans are part of this picture or not. And the data shows clearly that we are. And so we need to get past that and start looking at solutions rather than sort of, engaging in a political debate.
The full report on climate change implications for Nebraska can be found online. We'll link to it through the Market Journal website.